Welcome to another episode of Regional Italian Cuisine. My name is Caterina Borsato, and on this program we're going to be featuring chestnuts. Castagna for all our friends at home. Of course, a big part of my youth and growing up, because in European communities, chestnuts have been always a part of our diet. Basically, I guess chestnuts is one of those, well, we call it a fruit, believe it or not, but it is a fruit that has been around for years. In fact, it's probably one of the oldest and earliest of foods, often thought of as poor man's food because it really was associated with plentiful food that would fill your stomachs, and was never really associated with the upper class in their menus. But of course, over the many years, that has taken a real 360-degree turnaround, and now chestnuts have become very, very fashionable. Of course, they were introduced to Europe via the Greeks, coming from West Asia, and of course into Australia. Some of the earliest plantings of chestnuts was around the 1850s, 1860s, around the gold rush period, where a lot of Europeans, not just Europeans, but also some of the Asians, Japanese, Koreans, Chinese, of course, and the Europeans themselves brought these chestnuts with them. And of course, in some areas of Victoria, we have some fairly old stock. And on that note, of course, I want to introduce you to Peter Guest, who is our special guest tonight. And Peter, of course, he is a grower. He is a supplier. He's a spokesman for Premium Chestnuts Australia, and he's going to give us a little bit of a historical point, I guess, on chestnuts, how they grow, why they don't grow, when you're going to have a good season, and what we can do with them. So let's go meet Peter Guest. A little welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much, Caterina, for the opportunity to allow us to speak to your viewers about chestnuts. And
yes, you are the expert. Now, let me just ask you, you represent, or you are the spokesperson for Premium Chestnuts Australia.
That's
now, how long
right.
has the group been going for?
We got together, a group of keen growers got together in, I think, 1994.
Right.
And the idea was that we wanted to, this particular group of growers wanted to identify chestnuts who are more user-friendly, because there is an old joke in the chestnut industry that peeling chestnuts is the equivalent of the Chinese water torture, and we need to get past that.
Absolutely. So, well, of course, growing up, I just remember that we never knew whether the chestnut was going to peel easily or not. And my grandmother used to have this trick that after we roasted chestnuts, she'd wrap it in newspaper to help them sweat. I don't know whether that was myth or actually, you know, truth. But anyway, we did it anyway. It was all beautiful stories.
It is truth. It does help. But if you start with a variety that peels well, the job is much easier. Absolutely.
So now, how many growers in your group?
We have 20 farmers. There's 20 individual farms that have got together. So each one is a family-owned farm.
Right. Okay.
There's 20 of us.
And tell me, are you feeling that you're making inroads into the market out there? Because people get scared with chestnuts. I don't. You don't, but people do. Now, why is that?
Absolutely. Like since we've identified these new varieties, the reaction we get when our customers see chestnuts that peel easily is fantastic. Yeah. They get quite excited about them.
And of course, you know that chefs just adore chestnuts. I mean, they're all over the restaurants. So we just got to get into people's homes, I think. Now, let me ask you, tell me, where are the areas where the chestnuts thrive in? Because I know in Victoria there are a lot of chestnut trees, aren't there?
Oh, absolutely. They thrive in areas where we have deep, well-drained soil.
Yeah.
They need to be close to snow. So if you're in an area that gets occasional snow in the winter, that's the type of climate the chestnuts love. It's part of their genetic cycle that if they don't get cold weather through the winter, they don't fruit very well. So in the temperate areas...
What does that mean? As in the fruit doesn't form?
They just don't produce as many female flowers, and the fruit won't set, so you don't get viable fruit. You get a lot of blank chestnuts where there's no development in the fruit.
There's no sustenance, no body.
Yes. So areas that are colder, areas where you get a lot of frosts are very good.
So what areas are we talking about, like where?
The main chestnut growing areas of Australia are the northeast of Victoria in the Ovens Valley, around Stanley, Beechworth, Mount Beauty, and then moving up through the hills into the areas around southern New South Wales up towards Batlow.
Let me ask you, just talk to me a little bit about the fruit. Now, once it's matured and it's dropped on the ground, where do we go from there with the fruit?
Right. First of all, sturdy gloves.
Yep.
The burrs on the trees are incredibly prickly and incredibly sharp.
Yes.
80% of the crop for the last 20 odd years has all been picked by hand.
Right.
There's been machines that we've been working with to try and mechanise it to get them off the ground as quickly as we can.
So it's really labour intensive.
Labour intensive,
yep.
and the machinery damages the nuts pretty badly.
Okay.
But in recent times, there's a new machine that we're using that's come from Italy, and it's proving to be fairly successful.
Okay.
One of our growers at Stanley, Tony O'Rea, has bought one, and he seems to be pretty happy with it. You'll see that working shortly.
All right. Now, Peter, because you are the expert, I think I'd like you to tell our viewers exactly what we do with these nuts and how we get them ready for use in the kitchen.
Okay, I guess most of the traditional chestnut users would know that if you don't cut a chestnut and you put it in the oven or put it on your griller or on your barbecue,
doesn't it?
Absolutely, they're fully sealed and they explode. They go off like a firecracker.
Yes.
So it's very important that you cut the chestnut.
Right.
So we've found over many years that by getting the cut in the most appropriate way, it can make the peeling job a lot easier. And
so what does that mean, actually?
well, we need, if you're preparing a meal and you need to prepare 300 grams of chestnuts, you don't want to spend half an hour doing it. You want to be very slick. And by using the right type of knife, it will speed it up.
Do you have suggestions?
I have. Good idea. I've seen a lot of people attempting to cut chestnuts with paring knives and kitchen knives, and because you've got a long, sharp blade, it can be quite dangerous. And to get a good cut to cut through the pellicle, you need a very sharp knife. And if you have a longish blade that's very sharp, you have to be super careful. So my preference is to use a Stanley knife or those little snap-off blade knives where you've got a very sharp, small blade and you can cut them very quickly and you get a very clean cut. So
you're only using the tip of the actual Stanley knife actually?
Absolutely, and I'll demonstrate that in a minute. But if you get a clean cut, the pellicle comes back away from the kernel much better and it makes the process much quicker.
And do you need to go deep into the nut?
No, just through the pellicle, through the outer husk and into the pellicle, and just cut the pellicle. If you cut too deep, often what will happen that when you go to peel the chestnut, when you go to get the skin off, the nut will break up. So if you cut too deep, that is a problem, and that's what often happens if you use a big knife. So that's my preference, the little sharp Stanley knives.
All right. So is that you have mentioned Stanley knife because you want to talk about Stanley, do you?
Well, yeah, we were thinking it might have been a Beechworth knife for a minute. It's actually a Stanley knife.
Very good.